So obviously Ellen, some hot fucking water. As
Whew.
of late, this is a traumatic downfall for somebody who's just so regarded in public.
Ellen was on
Oh
the
man,
fucking. She was at the top of the hill.
oof.
People love. Everyone loved
Here's
Ellen.
my question: why?
Why did everybody love Ellen? Because
Yeah,
like the perception of Ellen, right, is like this. If you know Ellen's whole story, right, she is a actress, comedian who, uh, was doing really well. And I think when she came out as like gay in the 90s or late 90s, early 2000s or whatever. I think she was on a network television show, and they just kind of like I
I
think the
think she
network
literally had a show called Ellen. Yeah,
was
it
that
was like a syndicated show
before Ellen.
before this iteration of it, but it was actually like a scripted show.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And then like she came out as like as gay, and
Mhm.
then like the network canceled the show, and from there then she had like a kind of like a rocky career, and for a long period of time she was just kind of like unemployed, not even really working. Nobody would
I'm not
book
sure if
her.
that's the case. I think it kind of segued into like this
No, there was a
show.
good period of time
Really?
between that show and this show where Ellen was just like she was like she kind of went through like mild depression. She was at home. She couldn't
Mm.
get in a job. No one was like auditioning her. She was just like doing nothing. And then and then this opportunity kind of, I think she did a stand-up special or something, or she did a stand-up, and then like things kind of started to roll, and ultimately she rolled into this show. So
Yeah.
there's an interesting backstory there.
Mm.
Um, so if you know that backstory, you kind of have admiration for her of like being able to weather through that storm, you know, coming out as gay, weathering through the storm where this is before Hollywood is very accepting of all of this, right? Weathering that storm and then coming out on top of it, right? And not only coming out on top, but also coming out on top and still being on the surface. And I don't know Ellen well enough to criticize her. I don't know if all this stuff is true or not, but still being on the surface, this very kind, very generous, funny, thoughtful, just like human being, right?
Sure.
I think that's probably the thing people like most about Ellen is that like she just seems like a regular person who just happens to be like immensely
Yeah.
successful.
So we have the perception of Ellen,
Yeah.
and then we have the real Ellen, apparently. So let me give everybody a quick backstory. So when I was kind of like looking into this to see sort of where I should begin to like describe everything that was fucking going on, um, there were some very specific spots that were like, oh, this is a trouble area.
Yeah.
Um, and so let me start here. Back all the way back in January, there was this. I think it's like a YouTuber who or like a vlogger. Her name is Nikki Tutorials. Who she's a Dutch beauty vlogger who she was on the Ellen show and back in January, and then she was asked, I think she was like on a podcast or something, she was in some sort of format where they were asking her about like, oh, how was the Ellen show, and she was just like, these are her actual words, it's nice that you say hi before the show. She didn't, speaking about Ellen specifically.
Yeah.
And so she was basically saying like, hey, like, you see Ellen and she seems so nice and cordial, and everything is just great and above board, just like you were saying before. And she was like, yeah, she's kind of a dick a little bit, just a little bit mean.
Yeah.
And so she also said that she expected like the Disney show, and instead she got like the Teletubbies After Dark show, which was a different vibe, altogether. And so, all right, so we fast forward from January to April, and I think maybe it was she was on the show in January, and then in February she made these comments. So then you fast forward to April, where we're obviously in the middle of this pandemic, everything's going on, and so Ellen made a very critical error. That was in tennis, we might call this an unforced error. You didn't need to make this error, and yet it happened anyways. So she basically, um, or actually, right before that, there was this comedian who his name is like Kevin T. Porter, and I don't know exactly what axe he had to grind against Ellen, but he basically asked people to like source like terrible stories about Ellen. And here's like one example is that one person said that she served Ellen and Ellen's wife Portia at brunch, and she wrote a letter to the owner of the restaurant and complained about her chipped nail polish, and not that her nail polish was like in the food, but just literally that her nails were like,
I didn't like
her
my
nail polish was
server's nails.
chipped. Exactly.
Yeah.
And then
Wow.
and it almost got the woman fired. Okay, so and that's just one story of like
That's
many
crazy.
stories, right? That were just like all terrible stories of the way
I wonder
Ellen's
if
treated
she had
people.
a copy of the letter.
I don't know if she actually did, but in any event, I'll press on. Also in April, though, obviously, again, we're in the middle of this pandemic, and uh, Ellen puts out this, I think she's doing the show, and she puts out this like segment or section of the show where she says, one thing I've learned from being in quarantine is that this is like being in jail. Uh, is
No,
what
it's
this
not.
is. Fair enough. It's mostly because I've been wearing the same clothes for 10 days and everyone here is gay. That was her actual quote for what
Yeah.
she said, which in some worlds, I'm guessing some people might find that funny, but
Yeah.
probably not in the middle of a fucking pandemic when people who've like lost jobs. Literally, people who are in jail are getting COVID and dying, because they're in jail.
Yeah.
Here you are, this rich ass person sitting in your fucking
Plush
mega
mansion.
talking about this is like jail. It's like,
Yeah.
in what world is like that?
These
like
Italian
jail?
marble floors are like prison.
I didn't get the caviar
Yeah.
today because it got delayed because of COVID.
Yeah,
This is
my
like
heated
prison.
pool. It's not
Sorry.
the perfect temperature today.
Yeah.
But so, and on top of that, like people have been sourcing stories about Ellen, like just having done things that because she, for example, she can say that, oh, everyone here is gay because she's gay, so
Yeah.
the gay community is not going to come for her. But like, do you remember this is like VMAs or some movie award show back a few years ago where like Katy Perry wore that like super skin tight green dress, and like Ellen is just like clearly just like staring at her tits, like like what would be sexual harassment, right?
Yeah.
If a man were to do that. But like Ellen kind of was able to skate because she was a gay woman.
Yeah.
So there are like little things like that for Ellen, like people are questioning things she said or she's done, or just straight up stories of her just being like, an asshole that have like now surfacing. So behind closed doors, you're one way, on the surface, you're another way, and people are now starting to criticize it. I don't know how true all these stories are.
Yeah.
But when you look at the amount of stories that have come out, it's like you kind of have to say,
where there's smoke, there's a little bit of fire.
Even if 25% of these stories are true,
they're still not
those are
good.
still pretty bad stories.
Yeah. And so as with anything, right, it's a fucking avalanche of shit. So no sooner than that all this happens with her being basically blasted because of her kind of insensitivity to the whole COVID situation and likening her situation to jail, which is preposterous. There's stories that start coming out about and I think BuzzFeed did a lot of investigation about this, but stories that come out about the actual show specifically, about there being a lot of sexual misconduct that actually happened on the show. So that there were a number of like producers on the show, a lot of sort of like high ranking people on the show that were basically that people essentially like accused of doing all this sort of like sexual misconduct stuff, like, and really like just like kind of blatantly just like fucked up shit where it's just like, what, like I don't care if you're straight, gay, whatever, like this is not fucking cool that like have happened. And so all those things came out basically after this, and now it's under investigation. I think it's through Warner Brothers that the show takes place, and so I think Warner Brothers is doing investigations, so they say.
Really, they're just trying to weather the storm, I feel like.
They probably
again, this is like we talked about the show. This is like the morning show, right? With Reese Witherspoon, Jennifer Aniston. They're in some hot water right now. A lot of news is coming out about
they got somebody's got to go. Somebody's got to take the bullet here. It's probably definitely not going to be Ellen, but somebody's going to have to take the bullet.
The head producer of the show, the head of talent scouting or something like that, the chief editor, maybe somebody a little bit higher up than Ellen, like some executive, like the president of the studio or something like that. Someone's going to take the bullet. They're going to try to weather the storm.
Nobody high ranking like that is going to take the bullet. Ellen's definitely
with a nice compensation package. Take the bullet. Here's $50 million into your account in Turks and Caicos. It's all overseas. Nobody knows.
So obviously all these stories come out, and you even get some stories like Ellen basically, and I don't want to downplay all the sexual harassment stuff, but obviously Ellen's name is on the show, so it's basically as they say, Shout out to my man, with Scaramucci. I forget what his first name is, but I remember he said once, and this is about Trump.
Mhm.
He was like, "Oh, the fish rots from the head down," like, and so
Yeah.
so yeah, you got to start with Ellen. Her name's on the show. She's got to be responsible. And what a lot of people say is that a lot of people, like a lot of executives, like insulate her from all this stuff
Mhm.
because they just don't want her to like have to worry about it, or like that's just the culture that she's built. Is like, don't concern me with any of this shit. I'm just here to do my shit, to say
Yeah.
my lines, and get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
So clearly she's sort of built an arena where she has plausible deniability. Like, what was
Yeah.
going
I didn't know
on?
that was going on.
What? That sounds
I
crazy.
just do the show.
I just say I
Yeah.
come in, I say the lines. Who knew? Well, they were fucking filling people up and shit. But there's like other stories that come out that basically, like, speaking to her character, like she's cold, she's distant, yada
Mhm.
yada, which doesn't, even actually just watching the show, I can kind of like tell like that's kind of the personality she has, because she's like, she'll say things like, she'll have guests on and she'll laugh at them, whatever, but it just always seemed like there's like a barrier there of
Yeah.
like, ha, 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 ha,
Like, that
here's
wasn't
this
really,
cute
like, it wasn't
thing.
really a joke.
And like,
Yeah.
nobody was really laughing, but it's just like, ha, 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 this is so cute. Aren't people watching this entertained?
Yeah.
And so there's stories that came out like like she once called like Steve Jobs to complain about like the size of the iPhone. And when I read that, I was just like, well, like, then I started to think of like, well, truth be told, like, this doesn't sound crazy for Ellen. Like, she's mega rich.
Yeah.
Like,
Ellen could
been
probably get
rich
Steve
for
Jobs on the phone. You know what I mean?
like, this just sounds like rich people doing rich people shit. Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't sound like, that's like, it sounds, clearly it sounds outrageous
Yeah.
in terms of like, you're fucking gonna call Steve Jobs to complain about the size of the iPhone. It's shipped, it's done, it's
Yeah.
over. Plus, it's not your company. like, but it's just like, what would you do if you had like millions of dollars, hundreds
If I
of
could get
times
Steve Jobs
over,
on the phone, I'd probably call him too.
and just be like, and just shoot the shit and be like, yo, Steve, what's up with this fucking phone? You know what I mean? And I'm not trying
Come
to
on
say
the
that
show. Let me bash you on the show. You know?
And I'm not trying to say that she's like a good person or anything like that, but I'm saying like, yeah, this is what rich people fucking do. When you have Steve Jobs on speed dial and you can call him to complain about the fucking iPhone, the fuck else are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Like, of course you're so disassociated with like fucking real situations and real fucking problems that this is your greatest problem. Is like, I think this is just too big, even though there's multiple sizes of it. I think that this is just too big or too small, whatever the fuck it is.
Yeah.
And complain to Steve Jobs.
But then that only like as a snowball keeps rolling downhill, it gets bigger and bigger, right? So
Sure.
if you can get Steve Jobs on the phone, when you have to go to the Apple store, you expect to just be seen right away.
Yeah.
Right. You don't, I'm not fucking
Yeah.
waiting. Oh, you got to schedule an appointment. We have other customers. I'm not fucking waiting.
No.
I could get Steve Jobs on the phone right now. Right. And then
Ellen one of the original Karens? Oh, did we just uncover something right here?
Those are muddy, cold waters. I don't know. I don't
she
know.
one of the original Karens? Hold on.
I think like, again, like most people would have used that position if they could. I think what happens in a case like Ellen's, when you're so rich for so long and you're used to just being surrounded by other powerful people, you're insulated within your work environment, you have that plausible deniability. You either it was deep in you to begin with, or over time you started to just like see things differently. Maybe you were super kind in the beginning, and now you're just like, nah, these peasants, I'm rich as fuck. I don't need to deal. I don't need to say hello to you. You say hi to me. Like, I bet at a certain point she was just like, I expect people to say hi to me, but they should know that I'm too busy to say hi back. And to her, honestly, it became
there were
kind of
literally stories to that degree.
Yeah.
But in any event, Ellen, rich as fuck, and also it turns out mean as fuck. No surprise.
So here's my last thing on this. There's still so much more we haven't learned yet.
Of course.
So
Yeah.
if I'm Ellen, I'm like, fuck, this is only gonna get worse before it gets
better
better.
do the apology now before all the real shit gets out. But in any event, we'll move on from Ellen. Hopefully hopefully those grieved employees get their say, and get their justice. But in any event, we must press on.